Hello and welcome back to my channel, which is dedicated to philosophy, music, art, culture. I am violinist and philosopher, so welcome. Karl Jaspers and Martin Heidegger. It's a very difficult question about their relationships and their confrontation. By the way, Karl Jaspers 1883-1969, and so this long history of personal relationships takes place, but they were not only friends, but also interlocutors and philosophical partners maybe. And also philosophical ideas have a great influence, great extent to each other. And there was also a break in personal relationships, painful divergence in philosophical positions, and we may say attempts to deal with political issues, by the way. So the mutual criticism time to time is veiled, and not only between the great philosophers, but also between just usual person, usual friends, usual partners. And Heidegger talks about existential philosophy, and for him it's a dirty word. Its meaning isn't clear for Heidegger. And he also says about Jaspers that he made a lot of chatter about existence as such. Jaspers draws the reproach of chatter after Heidegger, and he accuses about the same thing that Heidegger is carried away by chatter about the contemplation of being, Sein, Dasein auf Deutsch in German. However, genuine discussion becomes impossible. Now, to tell the truth, and Heidegger's specific language for Jaspers is something like foxhole, And Heidegger stands as the last genuine German philosopher. What does it mean? German philosopher stands on the basis of the German philosophical language, and it's very poetical language, very picturesque, maybe. And German philosophical tradition continues the main line of development of German philosophy, the search for a transcendental foundation. And he continues and transfers them to the soil. And Jaspers is not just German philosopher. To tell the truth, he is more cosmopolite, and he is a philosopher from Germany, of course, but he can rather be called a European or rather worldwide philosopher, and he no longer stands on the basis of philosophical language like Heidegger. Jaspers doesn't pay attention to philosophical roots as Heidegger or Hegel or maybe, I don't know, Kant did. They all paid great attention to the roots and philosophical understanding of these roots. Hence, they are the peculiarities of Jaspers. He is more cosmopolite, as I have already said. He puts existential meanings in a scientifically rationalized form, which objectively doesn't correspond to these existential meanings, For example, for Heidegger, the symbol of a Christian love is caring, Sorge, die Sorge in German, And caring is a living term filled with existential content. For Jaspers, and Jaspers introduces the concept of communication between the human beings, and Christian understanding of love for Jaspers is endless communication, as he had said and mentioned many times. What will attract the human beings more and more? If you penetrate into the teaching, you can find teaching of divinity, maybe. You can find the existential, but the language shell is not effective in attracting a person's heart. It's just language for Jaspers. And his imagination to these existential problems were more contemplative. So, another important methodological discrepancy, that is the advantage of Heidegger. Heidegger doesn't give ready-made answers, by the way, and he forces the person to work hard to come up with some hints of an answer together with him. According to Heidegger, philosophy is not just a way to make a furrow with the help of a plough of thought. The reader must work hard. For Heidegger, it's absolutely undoubtedly to work hard before the meanings are revealed to the reader. And Jaspers gives ready-made answers. He doesn't force a person to work hard. They are very accurate and very informative. His works very, very informative and very clear, to tell the truth. It's amazing clarity for me. If a person is ready to receive these answers, then he can greatly benefit from these answers. But they are no answer without asking, of course. They cannot have the same meaning as for someone who has suffered from questions as his life has been going to get answers all his life. If he suffered and walked, then they will make sense. And both Heidegger and Jaspers in their works on the history of existentialism are considered the founders of existential philosophy. Heidegger himself has always objected to this, to be considered an existentialist. But objectively, there are many similarities between Heidegger's being and time and Jaspers' existentialism. The concept of borderline situations in Jaspers' works, for example, most of being and time essentially describes borderline situations without naming them that way directly. Yeah, the situation of conscience, being to death, horror, abandonment, Befindlichkeit in German, abandonment, situativeness into the world, and being overwhelmed by this world being, by this objectively of this world. And situativeness of existence is also the important thing for Jaspers, and one of the characteristics of human existence in Heidegger concept is so Befindlichkeit, mental state. Maybe it can be translated as something like mental state. Yeah. Dasein always finds himself in a borderline situation. It's so, and the historicity of existence is also an important thesis for Jaspers. The element of biography in Jaspers' existence reveals itself from his biography. For Heidegger, this is abandonment. Dasein is already in a certain flow of time. In this period of time, it's sank into the history. Between Heidegger and Jaspers, it's difficult to say who influenced whom. Jaspers influenced Heidegger because the motives that we have listed are the motives of existential philosophy, describe the wishes of human existence in the world. It's difficult to accuse Heidegger directly of just repeat of this concept, but Jaspers had a great influence on Heidegger in matters of historicity. In matters of historicity, Heidegger could influence Jaspers also. And methods of clarifying existence for Jaspers, it's a borderline situation, and for Heidegger also it's a borderline situation. This situation in which the clarification of existence is most easily accessible. The existence in them matures to achieve clarity. And there is a brief historical biographical information in Jaspers' works about girls who were killers, pathological cases. Their parents gave them to the services of nannies, and they fell into a stress-altered state of consciousness and killed their babies. These children were babies in various ways and did it unconsciously, absolutely unconsciously. The conclusion that Jaspers made on the basis is reflected in the doctrine of borderline situations. It was the borderline situation for these girls. And this is a situation of absolute impossibility of existence. It's the death for existence, in which further existence is felt as impossible. Existence is freedom, historicity, eventfulness. After all, it's about being yourself. And when I feel that I have been thrown into a situation in which I cannot be myself, this situation becomes borderline, and I have to choose something with conscious or unconsciously. This is a situation when we come face to face with our existential mortality. So it's very difficult question. Thank you for your attention and see you later. All good to you. Bye.